Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to the Library Tour of Doom. This is a library tour of all of my books, book by book, that Lord Ganesh and I thought you needed in your life. You needed the feels in your life. So we're going through every book, one book at a time. And I am fighting a desperate rearguard action in the Library Tour of Doom to stop each video from being 30 minutes, which would be kind of ridiculous. I did whole shelf tours 2 or 3 years ago in the same amount of time. If I have reached the point of garrulousness where I am now needing 30 minutes to get through each book, we're all lost. We might be lost anyway. So today we're going back to 2012, I believe. Yeah, 2012. We're reading a thriller today. This is The Survivor by Greg Hurwitz. This is the story of a soldier whose name is Nate Overbay. And he comes back from his deployment with PTSD and also with the beginnings of Lou Gehrig's disease. His doctor lays out for him the future that he has in store for him. Lou Gehrig's disease is pitiless. And Nate decides that rather than be a burden to anybody, his PTSD is bad enough already. He is haunted by the ghost of a dead friend that he left behind. Literally, the ghost is right there and quipping to him from time to time. He decides at the beginning of this book that rather than be a burden to the people around him, to his family, he will kill himself. And he scopes out buildings and finds one with a high ledge, hence the cover, that has a nice straight pitch to the ground. He doesn't want to make a mess. He doesn't want to alarm anybody. He doesn't want to be an overly big burden to get rid of. The corpse, I mean. So he finds such a place on the roof of a building that has a bank way up there on the floor, and he's on a ledge outside that bank when suddenly the inside of the window is splattered with blood and he hears gunfire. And he looks in and he sees a dead clerk, and he sees a crew of armed men robbing the bank. And instinct takes over because he is a good guy. He is a warrior. And instinct takes over. He sneaks inside the window, incapacitates someone, gains control of their weapon. The reason that the robbers are caught totally by surprise is because the last thing they expected was to encounter resistance, let alone resistance from outside on the ledge. They aren't expecting that at all, so when it happens, it catches them completely off guard. And he manages to thwart the robbery, and the one person who escapes sort of hisses at him before he goes, plays the what Jeremy from CinemaSins refers to as the pronoun game, says he will be very displeased, meaning the mastermind behind the robbery. And sure enough, soon enough, Nate is confronted by that bad guy who says, well, you ruined my robbery. You now have only a limited amount of time to make it right, to do the robbery yourself, or I'll kill your family and you. And this puts him in a horrible position of needing to figure out what to do. And the one thing that you realize as you're reading this thing, it's so good. It's so electrically good. The one thing you realize as you're reading, you get halfway through and you realize, oh, son of a gun, suddenly he's not thinking or acting like a victim anymore. Suddenly he is a good guy again. All of his instincts have returned. And he's pitted against a bad guy. And that plot, this is a thriller, so it has all of the structural weaknesses of thrillers that a lot of you, if you read thrillers, you'll know what I mean. The villain especially is absurd. This one doesn't draw the Duomo from memory or have 6 fingers on one hand, but nevertheless, the main bad guy is absurd, just over the top, a comic book villain. And all of the characters have quippy, chiseled Hollywood-style dialogue. You'll get used to that in thrillers as well. But one other aspect that tends to be true in thrillers that isn't usually true in other kinds of fiction is that it is a well-crafted story from beginning to end. The end of this book is incredible. Incredible. The last 5 pages will have a tear standing in your eye, and they will have you cheering, just sitting up and cheering. It is a perfect example of a perfectly executed ending. Right down to the smallest little detail. There is one little detail involving that PTSD ghost that is just perfect, just perfectly done. No other word for it. I reviewed this book for, for the Washington Post, and it was one of the only times in my reviewing career where I so much wanted to just tell people what the ending was. And one of the things that you'll be able to guess from it, and you'll guess correctly, it's not a spoiler of any kind, is that Greg Hurwitz is a very adult author. Not in a sordid way, but in a realistic way. If he gives a character Lou Gehrig's disease, there's not going to be a miracle cure. So you already know a lot of the things that Nate is facing in this book and how they can go one way or another. Boy, oh boy, if you read thrillers and you haven't got around to this one, you are going to love it. And if you get the paperback, the Washington Post blurb on it is yours truly. So it's doubly recommended. So that's your library tour of doom today, is a thriller. And boy, what a thriller. Just so good. I like this author just in general. This was my introduction to him. I'd never encountered him before. I've since encountered his work in thrillers, and he writes comic books. And he's really good. But I've never anything that hit the sweet spot quite so much as The Survivor, where even the title is just perfectly chosen. Just perfectly chosen. So again, your library tour of doom is enthusiastic recommend. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.